Today, we're looking at the top things that turn us off of wanting to play a game.
In case you missed it, we recently put out a video giving you our favorite things about new games. Things that make us excited. This is literally the opposite. These are things we hear about, we see on the box, we read about online, and we just think, I'm probably not going to like that game.
That's right. And for me, my first big ick is games that have the big fancy thing, the giant tree, the giant pyramid. Cool. It's great that it's in there, but like I immediately just start thinking, that's it, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
like that's it. You didn't make a game. You were like, we'll put a big thing in there, and you'll be like, cool. I want the thing. So these big standout components that are like the monument of the game, and like people talk like, oh, it has this cool dice tower with it or something. You know, a game like Everdell is truly a great, awesome game, and I like it. But like, there's a lot of games that just have the thing, and you're like, okay, cool. And it's just like, I don't know. So to me, it's like a red flag that there might not be a game there.
Mm-hmm. And even if it is a good game, you're like, I'm paying for that, aren't I? Like I'm okay. I'm paying for that extra piece, and so it's costing more money for the same game. So
yeah,
even though I completely agree with you, my number 8 is going to sound completely opposite. My number 8, if you watched our top 10 positive, this is one that literally is the opposite of one of my positives. When you see a big box in a store and you're like, it looks so cool and interesting, then you pick it up and you go, whoa, there's nothing in it. Which is funny because it's literally the opposite of, well, first of all, if you watched our good ones, the opposite of my good one, but it's almost the opposite of that, but so like, you see a box and it costs $60.
Yeah.
And it weighs nothing. And you maybe even buy this game, you open it up and you're like, oh, there's like 4 components, and they're like, someone says, well, they're planning on making expansions to fill the box up.
So
and you're like, but this costs $60 and there's like nothing, there's no game. Then it's just wasted space, even if it's a good price.
Yeah.
Now you just have a big box that doesn't have much in it, and you want it to be like a small box because it's a small game. So yeah, light boxes are just, I almost just put them right back on the shelf sometimes, especially if they're expensive and they feel light. I just go, set it back on the shelf.
Yeah, there's a certain publisher, I won't say their name, Fantasy Flight, where they have this bad habit of putting these inserts that are like 2 giant empty rectangles in all the components down the middle. I'm like, just give me a smaller box.
Yeah.
I don't want it to take up all the space on my shelf anyways. Just give me this small box. Like, it's just really
a game I like by publisher I like, Emotep.
Yeah.
When you open it up, it's a square, and there's literally a square inside of it. Almost a square, but all the corners are cut in, so they didn't need the room. If you don't have that in there, it just flops around too much. You're like, okay.
It's so annoying.
It's so annoying. I got it on discount though, so I didn't pay full price for it.
Savings.
Oh.
All right, if I haven't upset enough people yet, I think this one will do it.
Okay.
Get ready to unsubscribe.
No.
It is games that are IP based. That to me is just like it's like, ooh, it's Marvel. I'm like, okay. Ooh, it's Harry Potter. Okay. I didn't want to like the Harry Potter Hogwarts battle, which is a game I like. I literally saw it. I didn't want to like it. I was like, it's not going to be good. Anything that's based on a big IP, even a big IP I like Lord of the Rings. A big IP I like, I see that, I'm just like, they just have the longest history of being trash. And it's cheesy too. Like, ooh, I could play Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and kill some orcs. Like, just make me a random fantasy dude.
He wants to be a voice actor, so if anyone has job openings, just send them over.
But then I will be Aragorn if you need that.
Yeah, but then that'd be totally cool.
That'd be dope.
I actually totally agree with you. I think they've gotten better.
Yes.
It used to be they were just bad. Now they're like more legitimate games, but I think the cheesiness still hits me. I'm still just like, I think I've mentioned before, I'd rather create my own story rather than just be this person and be like, oh, you can shoot web because you're Spider-Man. I'm like, that's what he does. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine playing Above and Below? But it was like, but actually, it's Hobbit themed, and you go down, you're Bilbo Baggins, and you go down to meet the dwarves, and you can get them to join. It would ruin it.
Yeah.
It would be a significally less interesting
The
game.
fact that it has these creatures you've never heard of and stuff makes it so fun. Yeah. Unlike you, I actually want you guys to kind of like me by the end of this video. So before I say my next one, I just want to mention, I could only think of 5, and Joel really wanted to do more. So I wasn't going to include this one, It is kind of true though, but it's not the biggest deal. Similar to your first pick, just miniatures. Now I have been accused in the past of hating all miniatures, which is not true, but same kind of thing. If you see a game that's really expensive, you know you're getting the miniatures. You just start questioning, is the game here? Because sometimes it's not. Or the same kind of ideas as you said your first one, like this is an expensive box. I'm paying for the miniatures. Okay, so it's just, again, this is very low on my list. I added to fill out the space, but it's just not my favorite thing. I assume that things without miniatures are a better value for the game, and they don't excite me too much. I don't feel like, now some games have great miniatures, some games they really add to the experience. Sometimes they do cool things in the game, the component makes sense, but just the miniatures themselves, it is true, I don't love them.
Yeah.
I don't hate them.
Probably 9 times out of 10, if I saw that the game had a separate version, which basically never happens, it was like, this is a miniatureless version.
Yeah.
You know, we took $10 off the price. Like, I'd go for that.
Yeah, 20.
It's so rare that they add something, and I would imagine they add a really significant expense to games.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Who would think to make them? Yeah.
I would definitely take versions without the miniatures, because most of the time I don't care. Like, give me a smaller box. My number 6 may make me look like a hypocrite as one who is already professed that he likes Eldritch Horror, but Eldritch Horror may have actually bled into this reasoning. When I see a game that has a lot of unique decks, like a lot, I'm not talking like 5 or 8, I'm talking like 15, 20, like Eldritch Horror, a game I like. Dude, shuffling that many decks before you can play the game, and just finding a place for them on the table, and then while you're playing, you're like, is it the slightly red one or the slightly reddish blue one? And you're like trying to look, and like, man, just having a lot of decks is just so much upkeep. I think it's really hard to design them right where it's not confusing. So, and I'm a guy who likes Eldritch Horror and Robinson Crusoe, 2 games which have obscene amounts of decks, but when I see it on a game, I'm like, do I really want that? Do I need more of that in my life?
Yeah. It's also hard to shuffle.
It is.
Because my question is always like, how important, I'm going to make a lot of you mad. This is actually the worst thing I'm going to say all day. I didn't mean to say it. I didn't know your pick was going to be, but I will rifle shuffle cards. Not someone else's game. I won't do, I'm smart enough not to grab someone's collector edition. But I can use discretion. But for my own games, if it matters that it's random, like some games don't really matter, right? You don't really care for it. But some games it's so important it's truly random. Then you're like, how are we going to shuffle these 200 cards?
Big decks are also offensive too, just like that. Like a game like no one plays, like Canasta, right? It's just so many cards. Nobody's hands have enough space.
Yeah.
So
200 cards.
Is it 200?
I think it's 4 decks. So let's play 6 players and it's 6 decks.
It's okay, no one plays it.
You never heard of it. Up next here, I would still put this in the mild turnoff, not complete turnoff. And there's tons of exceptions for this one. But reprints, do-overs, sometimes expansions, when I just don't get excited about it. So like talking about a turnoff, someone's like, oh, there's a new game. I'm like, tell me about it. They're like, they redid this game. And I'm so always like, okay. Like, especially if I know the original, or I played the original, it might tweak one thing. And I get it might be better. And we're all hypocrites in this, because if I jumped into a game, 2nd edition or 2nd reprint, that's the version I know, which is fine. I'm not saying it's wrong, but for me, like when that game now has a reprint, I'm like, my copy's probably fine. And if someone says, but no, now they changed this one thing, I'll just change it on mine if I can, if I feel like it really matters. Or sometimes you've already changed it, 'cause that's why they made the reprint. But it's, again, I'm not saying it's bad. There's tons of exceptions, but I'm not personally excited by that game you have. Buy it again, but a little different. I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of the same. Probably the big exception here is when games go out of print. And then they get a new version.
Yeah.
But then sometimes I'm frustrated because they change rules. They're like, this would just be better if we changed it. I'm like, don't do that.
No. If you're out print and someone reprints, it's a literal reprint. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to more like
2nd edition.
Especially when you own the game and you already liked it. Yeah. Like I own Castles of Burgundy, the version before the last version. Not the collectors, not the one before that, the one before that.
Yeah, I knew exactly which one you're talking about.
There was the ugly one with the guy on the front like this, looking out over the kingdom. It's ugly. I'm not going to buy new versions of Castles of Burgundy. I'm fine with it.
My number 5 probably should have been my number 8. It's completely petty.
Cool.
But it is honestly, it's just a huge turn off for me. I'm just like, I
Get your fingers
don't
ready.
like
Get your
it.
fingers ready for the hate.
Photography is artwork.
Okay, that's fair.
It's just this, like, you look at like those zombie games, which they're zombies anyways. You know, the ones we're talking about that have like just like pictures of people, and you're just like, And Battlestar Galactica is one of my favorite games. Again, hypocrite here. Its artwork does not. I'm not like, ooh, yeah, pictures. Even like Arc Nova has like edited pictures.
Poorly edited pictures sometimes.
Goofy.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, I know it's really petty. It's just art. There could be great mechanics underneath. A lot of these games I do like. They even have. But every time I see it, and a lot of times it's tied to IP too, and that's like a double whammy of bad.
Yeah.
But every time I see photography as artwork, I'm like, it's pretty ugly. It's very rarely done tastefully. So that's it.
I think in case you're not completely clear on this, like we're not saying these games are bad. These are turnoffs. So when we see it, like I saw a game the other day, actually, same thing, that it reminded me a little like Arc Nova artwork. I shouldn't say art. It's not art. Arc Nova, but worse. And I was like, did they set a precedent that that's okay now? So I was like, oh, really badly edited. And I was like, oh. But it is a turnoff. Not saying the game, if I played it, it might be magnificent. And it wouldn't bother me. I could play a game with bad art. But yeah, if you see photography, you're just kind of like, okay.
You're like, I'm not getting into it for the looks.
Yeah. This is where my list truly begins. Number 5. Hey, Joel, do you want to play the most immersive strategy game you've ever seen in your life that offers you the best decisions you've ever seen?
No.
And all in less than 15 minutes. I hate that. There's two things that happen. Sometimes they literally say, best strategy game you've ever seen in your life in less than 15 minutes. You're like, okay, or best decisions or whatever. But sometimes it's like the game looks big and epic, and you see like 25 minutes to play time.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, which
confusing.
It could be good.
Sorry. Just came out of nowhere.
It could be good. I mean, there are, again, exceptions for all these things, but especially when they put the text on there, and you're like, it could be a great strategy game, but to claim it's like the best or super immersive, but only 15 minutes, and like, maybe I'm looking for a really good strategy game that offers great, big, long-haul decisions. And again, not saying the games have to be bad. I need to stop saying this every single number, but it's just a turnoff. I'm like, oh, I don't think it's going to be the greatest strategy game I've ever played in my life, and I'm going to do it in 10 minutes. Or the time is a lie. Yeah. Maybe it is really good, but the game's actually 90 minutes long or something, you know, like either way.
I didn't put this on here, but just dishonest text on boxes. That's not really, I guess, a turn off initially, but like when it happens, you're like,
I almost put on here when you see 1 to 6 on the box, and you're just like, like it is kind of a turnoff. If you're looking for a game to play at 1 to 6 puts that into question. If you're looking for a game to play at 6, 1 to 6 puts that into question. You're just like, oh, if a game is like 5 to 6 players, you're like, that probably works really well.
My number 4 is something I put on here because I was thinking about you.
Aw,
but actually, it strikes me too. Now, I like these games more than you like these games.
Are you going to steal one of my picks?
But you probably hate this. But I, when I see it, don't want to play it. And that is anything fantasy or medieval. It's just so like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's great games that are fantasy medieval games. Like games I love.
Yeah.
But I see it on a box, I'm never like, woo, let's go. It's just, all right, there's another one. It is as tasteless as like not having a theme to me. It's like, it is there so that I guess there's some words and vocabulary to make the game interesting that aren't like move block. But I'm just so not compelled by a fantasy box.
Yeah, I will speak more on that later. My number 4 is when you are this is more at the store, and you see a cover that just draws you in. This actually happens a lot. You're like, that is so beautiful. It's so interesting. Then you flip it over, no offense, and you see it's just an abstract strategy game. Now, I actually have some abstracts I really like, but there's always that little bit of letdown when the cover looks like it's oozing with theme.
Yeah.
And then you flip it over, and you can just see it's a grid and like blocks on it. There's like several of these games. Like Mariposas is the one I was like, oh yeah, it's an interesting dark cover with the butterflies. You put the box over, you're like, I mean, I might still like it, but it's just like that. It's just a little bit of a letdown. So I don't know. I like some abstracts, but they don't look exciting.
It's the promise of theme without the theme.
Yeah. Like,
like
what world am I drawn into? And often these games, if you read the first page of the rule book, are always like, you're an explorer who's been trapped in a desert island. and 2 of your legs have been eaten. And well, I guess all your legs have been eaten, and 1 of your arms, and then as you go down, it'll be like the only way you can escape is by matching the blue and red gems, and rotating them, and by rotating them you trigger a track, and whoever does it better wins. Go.
Is that the theme of Patchwork?
I don't know. I never played Patchwork, but
Oh, really?
maybe.
Yeah. My number 3 is a topic we briefly touched on,
Okay.
and it is massive / meaningless player counts. 1 to 8 players.
There you go.
I could think of like 1 or 2 games ever that have these massive player counts that are actually fun to play.
Have you ever thought of a 1 to 8?
I don't know if I've ever seen 1 to 8. I've seen Small World plays well at 8, and it plays pretty well at like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
That's like a game that has a really wide player count that, like, yeah, it's actually enjoyable at all player counts it has. But like
Rare.
1 to 8, you're making some compromises.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier, you probably have a variant in. In my opinion, once you bring the variant in, can you please just not advertise on the box? Wingspan. You don't want to play Wingspan by yourself. I'm sure some people do, but like
It's not a bad solo game as far as solo games go. I don't
as
think.
far as solo games go, but like
I think it's
don't know.
fine. I think it's fine.
Don't defend it. You hate Wingspan.
I don't hate Wingspan.
Yes, you do.
You've been paying attention to the development of this channel. There's been a character arc here.
yeah, there has actually.
There has been.
You have.
I think it's an okay game.
You cover
I
up.
think the
You're-
solo is actually fine.
It's fine.
It's a solo game anyway, in a sense, when you're playing multiplayer. So it transitions, I think, actually fine. But I do agree with you.
Yeah. I hate it.
Well, the crew box made me so happy because I bought the crew for 3 to 5 players, knowing I would not be able to play with 2 players, but I had so much fun with it. Then I saw in the rule book there's a 2-player variant, and I think it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say, at least the old one, I don't know if the new one does, but the original one just like 3 to 5. So I bought it with the expectation of playing it 3 to 5. And it's really good at 3, 4, or 5 is really, it's okay. But 3, 4 is great, 5. But then, like, oh, by the way, 2 is actually a good variant.
Yeah.
But they didn't like promote it as a 2 to 5 player game because it does change the vibe of the game at 2 quite a bit.
It does, but it was like a nice little treat to find in the box
Yeah,
for
yeah,
later.
yeah.
But if you had gone into that thinking, I really want to play this with like
2.
you know, my spouse, and like it's a 2-person game, I think you'd be pretty.
I'd be
let
pretty
down.
disappointed that
It-
I
it
bought
would
the game for 2 players and you're
Yeah.
like, you read the entire rule book, but you can't do that too.
Yeah, it's great that it's in there.
Yeah.
But if that's what you like, feel like you're buying,
Yeah.
just advertise the player count that it's
Yeah.
really made to play.
Yeah.
And if you throw a variant in the box, that's a great little treat. You can even put there with a 2-player variant or with a
Yeah.
solo automata variant. But don't advertise it as that.
Yeah. Some few boxes do it right, but most boxes don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. My number 3 is probably, I think, fairly universally hated, but apparently not completely, because they keep making games with it. You know what would be fun? We sat down and played a competitive game, but it would be interesting to play a cooperative game instead of competitive. It'd be really fun to, like, for 2 hours, maybe fight a monster or try to save the world.
Yeah.
But by the end of that, one of us has to be the winner, right?
Yeah.
Semi-cooperative games.
It's such a bad.
There might be some examples of decent ones, but it is such a turnoff. There could be a game that has some interesting dynamics where you call it competitive, but you have to work with your opponent sometimes. That's different. But a game that's like Castle Panic has this ridiculous variant in it. That's like select who has the most kills. So you're like, I'm not going to kill the troll. That's going to knock down your castle because then you'll die. And I guess the tower thing's a variant as well. But it's still just like, I don't know, if I play a cooperative game, then you're like sacrificing for the team and everything. I just don't like, why do we have to decide a winner at the end of co-op game? So I don't think semi-cooperative is often good. So it's definitely a turn off for me.
Yeah, I've never played one that worked for me.
Yeah.
I've never played the one that worked for me. They work mechanically, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it builds this awkward tension where you're like, the only real play style is semi-committing as much as possible. Where if you have a cooperative game that like forces you to sometimes, like a lot of area controls like this, like you might have to work with someone to get the person in the lead.
Yeah.
That's much more interesting because it's a loose alliance in a competitive game. Like you're still trying to kill each other. You're not necessarily friends, but like for a moment you may need to work together. And to me that's the same feel but better than like, we all want to do as little as possible to still win. That's, I don't know. That doesn't excite me at all.
Semi-co-op.
You know what sounds fun, Ryan?
Story time?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's say you have some friends over to play a
Okay.
game together.
It's a semi-cooperative.
It's not so
Okay.
good. It is. No.
Wow.
And you get them together. They come to your house. You get around the table. You set up a
Okay.
game.
Okay.
And you get all the components out. And then
It's like I'm there.
you go, now let's all install the companion app to play the game. And we all pull our phones out. Or you even have one in the middle. And it's like, oh, it's unplayable without the app. And then the developer, the publisher stops producing the app 4 years after they publish the game, making the game actually unplayable.
No joke.
This is...
This was on
This
my
is-
list. It just didn't transfer over.
You just forgot it?
I just forgot
This
to
is-
transfer.
this
Take
is-
off miniatures. Miniatures are great. I love them. Mobile companion apps.
This is awful.
Awful.
This is just... It's a board game.
It's a board game.
Just put it in the box. There's not a hybrid. Mansions is okay. It's the best hybrid. There's not a hybrid that's very good. Most of them lose app support after a few years. Just stop it.
Yeah.
You play board games to like do something tactile and in person. If you want to play video games with your friends, you can play video games with your friends. Stop trying to make these experiences, because I really haven't seen one that
Yeah.
can't translate to playing on the table.
Yeah.
If you were trying to make some crazy new experience that truly couldn't be done, maybe.
Yeah.
But they're always like, it just feels like a dumb gimmick. I'm just like, here's the cool app. That's what you do when you get with your friends. You all want to be on your phones, right?
Right.
It makes me
I'm so sad I forgot to put this on my
so
list.
mad.
I literally have my list, and when I ordered it, it didn't transfer.
Yeah.
I'm really sad because I really want to rant about this too. Yeah, I feel the same way. Like
Rant.
I like video games.
Yes.
They're fun.
Yes.
Often, even sometimes two-player video games, whatever, it's fun. It can
Yeah.
be fun. But more often, I play video games on myself and then board games with people. And yeah, you're there because you could just play a video game, but there's something about a board game. And then yeah, the companion apps. And like you said, there's like First Merchants. I'm just waiting for the day that it needs an update and it's not done or something. You know, oh, it's going to happen. And
Yeah.
not yet, but it might happen. It will happen, right?
It will.
That's the lifespan of all this
One
stuff.
day,
Eventually,
iOS 25 will come out, and they'll be like, why are we paying someone to produce it for this game that no one bought? And they'll just stop.
And then the defenders of the game will be like, no, you have to go to this real sketch website where Bob developed a port that works.
FirstMartianBuddies.com. No, it'd be like something weird, .xyz.
Yeah. The website's been around since 1994 somehow. Anyway, so yeah, I'm really sad I forgot this. Yes, mobile companion apps.
It's probably the biggest offense on my list. I hate it.
Okay, so you have actually mentioned my number 2, but you split them off. I just put them into one big category of overused themes. This can be IPs. IPs are annoying. I mentioned this earlier, not always because the games are bad, but I'm really annoyed by the ones that are overused. Like you said, like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is a great, like maybe the best fiction ever.
Yeah.
I don't need another. I have all the books. I'm gonna get into Lord of the Rings. I will read some of the other books that the man wrote. There's like so much Lord of the Rings content. I don't need another game where you're playing yet the same characters again.
Yeah.
Like at least do Lord of the Rings and do a sub story in the universe that you made up. Like, but I'm just overused themes. And then you also said just like fantasy. I feel the same way about fantasy, and fantasy is a big offender because sci-fi is overused. But people sometimes do different things in sci-fi that you haven't thought of. They do in fantasy, but it seems like often it's like, this is a fantasy game, and you're going to have the elf who happens to be good at magic, and you're going to have the human who uses his sword, and you're going to, it's like, I haven't played it, I won't pick up. I played a new fantasy game recently that was like, it just had hobbits and just called it hobbits. And I was like, you're not even trying here. Like, at least call them halflings or something. The generic name they deserve. But just say it's Lord of the Rings, okay? Like, just say you're stealing the idea. And we're talking about things that are just turnoffs. I walk through the store, I see one of those games, I just don't often even like turn over the box to read it back. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I think they're not bad, and there's definitely counterexamples of these things I like.
Yeah.
But they're almost tasteless for me at this point, where I'm like, you'd have to have something else to pull me in. Because if that alone is just going to be like, why am I going to flip that over?
Overused themes.
My number 1 is perhaps not as rage-inducing for me as my previous one, because that I just hate. But this is because it kind of defies what I want out of board games as a whole.
Okay.
So that's why I landed as my number 1.
Okay.
And that is games that are multiplayer, games you play with other people that are just disguised solitaire. I just don't get it. Why do I want to go through? It's a lot of work to pull together a board game night. And we're all going to sit at a table. We could do this online. We could play video games. But we're all going to sit at a table and we're going to work on our board right in front of us. And we're not going to like work with the person on our left and right. We're not going to interfere with what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why are we sat at this table playing a game alone together? We could have a conversation and build some Legos too. Like, that's just as fun, probably better. So, I don't get it. For me, I'm like, I want to play a game where we have meaningful interactions with each other. And if we're just playing solitaire together, nah, it doesn't do it for me.
I've picked on multiplayer solitaire games so much. I think most of you probably heard it already from me, so I'm glad you got a different perspective. But yeah, I'm completely agree. Like, when you play a game that's like, you could just have a conversation and interact more. Or, I mean, I think about some roll and write games where, like, we could literally all just go home and do this.
Yes.
And then come back and just see who won.
We would have more meaningful interactions washing the dishes together.
My number one, I guarantee you, will be the lamest number one.
Again?
In the history of this channel. There has never been, never.
Did you watch our previous video?
No, I guarantee you.
It was so boring.
Shut up. This is the worst number one I've ever had. It's mobile companion apps. I forgot I wrote it down.
Oh, you said you forgot you wrote it.
I thought I wrote it. I thought it was like 5. So I looked at the list. I didn't see it. So I was like, I didn't write it down. How did I miss that one? It's my number one.
They're really bad, aren't they?
They're terrible. I have picked up games before, looked at them, and just been like, nah. I mean, the one game I own that has to use a mobile app that I haven't gotten rid of is First Merchants. Yeah. I get it. It saves so many cards, but it's still just like, I'm always a little disappointed that I can't finish the setup unless I select my campaign mission on the app and see where I put the little tracks. I'm like, oh, and then I have to like read the story on there. There's always a little bit of just, I don't know, it just feels better to flip a card or something. So, mobile apps.
It's just not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But you know what else is really annoying?
When great videos like this come to a close.
That's right.
Were you going to say that?
I was going to say when you're not subscribed.
If you want to in the near future, or maybe last week, depending on how the order the videos come out, we have our top 10 games, the big one.
And you're on a roll of the worst number one list I've ever seen. Can you please make sure your number one for our top 10 is something interesting?
I'll try not to be like, oh, I should have wrote that one down, and then be like, oh yeah, I did. Thanks for checking it out. See you next one.
Bye.